In this video, I'm going to start tearing some more things apart and start bead blasting parts. I might even start taking the suspension apart. I'm going to get these off. I'm going to measure from this part of the control arm here to here. I'm going to clean this up first, and then I'm going to measure and write down the measurements for everything. So when I reassemble it, I can have the alignment somewhat close, I mean, it'll have to be realigned no matter what, but at least it'll be good until I can get it in to get it aligned to put new bushing. It shows an alignment was done in 1974, and the car was stopped driving in 76. And these probably just went to heck from the years of sitting parked, and this is the only one that's really bad, and I'm just going to replace them all. And I did order springs for the car today. They were $119 at all the auto parts I went to. They're $119 on eBay, and I found them at Summit Racing for $90, including shipping. Same part number, same brand, everything. So that's what I'm getting. Picked up some shoe repair stuff so I can glue my dumpy shoes up here. I got my better ones on right now. These are Briggs Diad 10s. Tell you what, they're the most comfortable shoes I've ever worn. These ones are 9s. I love these. There. Love these shoes. I didn't order the suspension parts because I want to get it apart and see what it needs. I can buy a kit that comes with all the rubber bushings, upper and lower control arm bushings, and the lower ones look okay, but just get them. And all the joints are good in this car. The pitman arm's good, no slop in anything there, and the tie rod ends are all nice and tight, inner and outer. It showed the inners were replaced in 74 when that alignment was done. It needs the sway control bushings. So the kit comes with the sway control, upper and lower control arm bushings, all 4 ball joints, and inner and outer tie rod ends. But it doesn't need tie rod ends, and I'm not going to order the kit until I get the control arms out, and I'll really look at the ball joints. And if they don't need replacing, I'll just get the bushings and the rubber separately, because that'll be about $150. And if I need the ball joints, I'll order the kit, because these are, a little more money, the ball joints, and I can get the kit for like $300 and just change it all if it needs it. But I'm going to take it apart before I order any parts for the suspension. But these hands down needed to be replaced, and they're all the same, so they're on their way, and I'll just get the shocks closer to when I need them. And I can, when these are out, I can throw them in the bead blast cabinet and clean them all up. The same with the backing plate and the spindle. All that I can clean up like brand new and paint it up. And then I can clean the chassis all up around in there and everything really good without it together, and paint that. And then when I put it together, it'll all look like brand new. And I've been bead blasting parts. It says Ford on the blade. It says front on it. And then on the back side here, it has the part number. Does that show up? And it has, I believe, the date code too. Is that the date code, the S, then it's a dot, and then it's C6ME, then dot C? Probably not. Then above it, there's a 66B913280. So that's if you couldn't read it, that's what's on the fan blade. Also, did up the oil cap so it's ready for paint, and I had to I actually used Gorilla Tape to mask tape this off, and then I took a razor blade and cut right around on that edge. Gave it a real quick bead blasting so I wouldn't get any beads whatsoever in the breather, and primed it. So this will get painted when I paint the transmission. Did you see the neat little Fumoco on it? Does that show up? So that'll look nice once it's painted black on the engine. Do that when I paint that. So yeah, so I still got pieces here to do. I got the shift linkage, the part the regulator was on. These are the lower radiator supports. And you can see black paint on the bottom of this one. I mean, they look terrible, but really when it comes right down to it, they're just dirty. I could take it in and probably wash it with soap and water, and it would probably look pretty good. It's not, I mean, they're not really, you can see the paint. I can flake the paint off in places and still see metal underneath it. It's just really nasty dirty. And so anyway, and what rust is just minor surface. I mean, you can see the paint still there. It's not bad. You know, I mean, this car's 53 years old. All these bolts I'll bead blast too, and then I'll just stick them through some cardboard to spray them. The fan, these are for the fan blade. The fan spacer, which says Ford right on it. I don't know if that shows up. Probably not, but that looks pretty nice. Well, there's no getting these off without getting a wrench on the backside nut, and the control arms are kind of in the way for that, so I'm going to get the suspension off first. So I guess I'm going to start taking the brakes off. And I had a tuber that got one of these cars without the front end. So here I'll do a little video around of the inner fenders, so you can kind of see. I mean, it's pretty stripped down to nothing. There you can see where it's rusted out, where it would have kind of bolted there. I'll do a little video under in there too for you. A video or two ago, you can see where there was like a rubber flap bolted here, and it was plastic riveted into these holes and then bolted there. It was just a rubber flap that went across there. And it just bolted around the fender. Bracket there. Some brackets there. That's the bumper bracket, that big bracket. And that has nothing to do with the inner fenders. So hopefully this helps you out a little bit. Really pretty cut and dry. I think that the fender is, I'm not really sure. I think that the body mount is right. Let me see if I can get a better view of it. That's this is all part of the body mount. I don't know if I can't see what the camera's looking at. Where's the light? There. Headlight bucket. Leaf back in there. Looks like there's another panel right there. And of course all the fender and a lot of bolts on that front end. And there's like rivets that hold the grill to that metal there. And then there's screws through the front of the grill. And the grill looks like it's two pieces. You can see a joint right there, so there's an upper and a lower half to the grill. This is all coming off to, so I can paint this core support. And the bumper's coming off too, as it's going to the chrome plater, and then I can paint this panel here too before it all goes back on. So once this and this is off, that's going to be off until the car is painted. There's really not a heck of a lot of anything. This is the driver's side. I guess behind the rear wheel, between the firewall and the rear wheel. And I can't see what I'm videoing. Well, I hope that helps you a little bit there. Here, I'll show you the part the hood hinge bolts to too. And I took the rubber grommets off these. This is the front left wheel. It looks like there's about 50% of the lining left, or maybe a little more. Usually you replace the lining when it's as thick as the plate they're mounted, the metal are mounted on, or thinner. They're riveted shoes. But really, I mean, look at that. You can still see the paint. That's gold paint on that shoe and silver paint on that shoe. Or silver, bare silver maybe. The wheel cylinders don't look like they're leaking. No, and they're not rusty in there either. Let me see if I can hold the light and... Yeah, it's hard to, but yeah, I bet you any money if I bled the brakes out in this car they'd work, but they're getting replaced. But you know, I just saying that, you know. I mean, look at the hose there. Yeah, it's pretty rough, but the brakes are in good shape. The drums look pretty good. Maybe get a finish cut on the drum. I'll have them measured and see. And the wheel bearings had good grease in them. The outer race looks good. I haven't taken the inner apart yet, but we will eventually. This is the passenger side, and it's in about the same condition. And the wheel cylinders again, that one's got, well, there's no real rust in there. No leaks, no rust. I don't think they're getting replaced, the wheel cylinders, but yeah, I think they're okay. I mean, it looks all pretty good. I'm going to replace the hardware. I'm going to spray that down with some brake clean. I just use this stuff and just kind of, I'll hold my camera back. I don't want to get brake clean on it. It'll melt the plastic. But that's all you got to do. And I don't know if you noticed or not, but this car has self-adjusting brakes. So these are what are referred to as dual servo brakes. Basically what that means is when you apply the brakes going forward, the wheel's going around this way. So when the pistons push these shoes out, generally this shoe, both shoes grab the drum, but this leading edge, this shoe hits the drum, and it tends to want to push this shoe back a little bit as it's turning, and it pushes this shoe harder against the drum. So you get more braking force than what's required from the hydraulic cylinder. You don't have to put as much pedal pressure to get the same braking force if it was non-dual servo, if these just pushed out and didn't pivot. The whole brake shoe assembly actually pivots a little bit. That's why this shoe is always a bigger shoe, because this shoe does more of the braking, because it's got the wheel cylinder pushing it against the drum, and it's got this shoe wanting to push that way, pushing the bottom more against the drum. And that's pretty typical of dual servo brakes. One thing I did notice was that when whoever did the brake job on this car last put the springs in wrong. The drum turning this way, the rear spring, this spring here, should go on first, and then this spring goes on. That way if something gets caught in here, it doesn't pop that spring off, because the other spring will still hold it in place. So always put this spring on first and then this spring on, and as you can see, it's the opposite of the way it should be. So that's just a little tip on drum brakes. Always put this spring on before this spring. And when I do the brakes, I'll show you, they're pretty easy to do. Drum brakes are super simple, and getting this spring in. I see a lot of people fighting with it, and the key is when you anchor this shoe down, not to anchor this shoe down, and you can get your spring in here and your adjuster in here, then you can just kind of, without this spring in too, you can just kind of work your shoe back with this in there, and then put this in, then put this spring on last. This spring will be on, this will all be on for your self-adjuster. This is your self-adjuster there. That's how it works. See how it turns? I'm surprised that's not seized up. I didn't back them off to get the drums off. So that's rare when you have a car that sat for 43 years, you know, that rust. You get a ridge around here. Usually it's a nightmare to get the drums off. I've had to, you know, always usually back these off all the way to get the drums off. But anyway, if this moves too much and it pulls this cable up enough, the next time the cable returns, it tightens that star wheels. If it doesn't move enough, it doesn't move the star wheel. Let me see if I can get the light a little better. Yes, there. So if you're braking and it's only moving that, and generally that's when you back up and it pulls the shoe this way because of the, you know, then it wants to push that shoe against the drum. That's why backing up, the brakes aren't as effective as they are going forward on these cars. But once that gets enough, see how it just clicked above it, and then you let off and it does that. So that's how the self-adjusters work. I didn't expect that line would turn out of there. It did break off here because the line was seized inside the nut, but as you can see, that line is still enough to where I can make a brand new line identical to it with my tubing bender. I can just, you know, I save the old lines as I take them off and use them as a pattern to make the new lines. And I can take that little bracket off, bead blast and paint it. Get yourself a decent brake tool. That's for putting the springs on, that's for removing them. You just kind of put them in there. Whoops. It's harder to do it one-handed and off. And then the other tool, whoops. And that I'll probably have to, will have to hold it in the back. So yeah, I can't. Sorry, I can't take that one off and hold the camera at the same time. The tripod won't fit this low. Get the wheel cylinder off, big nut. And I'm going to take the wheel cylinder off before I take the backing plate off. Well, you got to, because this is actually bolted through here, but these are the other two bolts that hold the backing plate on. Then this can go in the blast cabinet, and there we got all the brakes. One of the springs that holds the shoes, you know, that were here, that holds the shoes to the backing plate was busted. Like, that's what it should look like. Take the brake hose off so you can get your wheel cylinder out before you loosen the wheel cylinder. And that is 1.25 inches that it takes. And you got to straighten this out first before you one bends one way and the other bends the other way. It's kind of just a lock. One kind of locks against one side and the other locks. So there's the wheel cylinders. Actually got clean oil in it, and pretty clean bore. Yeah, something tells me the brakes would have worked on this car if they were bled out. So, you know, I get the wheel cylinder off. Now I can take the backing plate off. I just had to switch my memory card. I just wanted to show you, you know, I got the backing plate off and that didn't tear, and it didn't tear on the backing plate side either, and that way I can get it in the blast cabinet and really make that thing look nice. There's two different size bolts here. They came right out, no problem at all. The longer one goes here where the spindle is, the shorter one over there. Just a little pointer, whenever you work on these old cars, use 6-point tools. They less chance of rounding things off. The driver's or passenger side, I mean, is apart, and again the foam came out good. Both the springs that hold the shoes to the backing plate were broken. I put the nut back on where the wheel cylinder goes with just a drop of oil just to protect the threads. Mostly I have to clean the threads, chase them all, you know, make sure that, so when you tighten this up, it tightens the wheel cylinder and doesn't just bind up in the threads. So the next step, I think I'm going to have to get the shock absorbers out, because the spring compressor goes up in between the coils. And before I can get those shock absorbers out, I need to move the jack stands. So I'm going to put the jack stands here under the frame, and I might just leave my jack over there under the cross member, just lightly, a little bit of pressure on it while I'm working on this, and just for peace of mind. And then I get the shock absorbers out, and then you want your suspension fully relaxed, you know, that spring sprung as much as possible when you go to pull it out. I'll show when I do it, but like I say, the spring compressor goes in the spring. That's the spring compressor. This goes down so you can get a socket on it through where the shock absorber went up in, and you just run that up enough to where you can just move the spring in there without any pressure on it. So all you need to compress the spring to. And then you can undo your control arm, lower it down, and then just take your spring out, and then just undo that until the tension's off of it, and then your spring's out. So that is my next task, is to remove the spring. I suspect that getting the control arm unbolted isn't what I'm worried about. What I'm worried about is getting that bolt out so I can lower the control arm. That's, you know, it's probably after 53 years rusted into the control arm, but you know, maybe not. I mean, this side, these bolts just came out like a breeze too. And one thing I always do, you know, you always want your can of penetrant, or just even a squirt can of motor oil, anything, so you can put a little oil on the threads, you know, beyond the nut and on the nut, because if you don't and they start loosening and it comes into a dry area, it's just going to seize up and break off. If you put a little bit of oil on it, it'll lubricate it and keep it going. So no matter what, I always put penetrant or oil on the nuts before I even attempt to undo them, and it just makes life a lot easier. And while I'm at it, I'll just kind of show you what I needed tool-wise. Obviously a hammer, 9/16, 5/8, 13/16, 3/4, channel locks, 3/8 line, the two brake tools. I think this was 1 1/4 inch, yes, for the wheel cylinder. 9/16 impact on the backing plate. And when I use the impact, I just wrap it real quick just to jar it to break it loose. A screwdriver to straighten up that locking washer on the nut held the wheel cylinder on. These for the cotter pins on the wheel bearings, and those to pull the cotter pin out. Yeah, they pulled out. I was surprised, you know, and everything had come apart. You can sure tell this is not a Michigan car. If this was a Michigan car, every fastener I've been trying to undo would have had to probably been heated until it was cherry red with a torch before it would undo. So yeah, it's refreshing when you can undo things with a wrench or just a quick wraps of an impact and not have things bust and actually have things come apart. And let's take a look at the wheel cylinder on this side of the car. A little dried up, but I bet it would have worked. You know, they would have probably started leaking right away. But yeah, no doubt I could have got the brakes up in this car. Take two. First one, I pushed the wrong button on the camera, and realized it when I went to stop it from recording. But anyway, I just want to show you, these are the bolts that hold the control arm, lower control arms in. So I'll give them a little spray tonight. I'm not going to do these springs for a couple more days. I want to get a couple extra pair of jack stands from my dad's. I just feel more comfortable with a couple pair in there, and and whatnot. So, you know, I might measure, clean this surface and this surface, just clean this up so I can measure that out and write all those dimensions down. Then I'll move the jack stands, like I say, get the shocks out, and we'll go from there. I'll make a video of that too. So I'm going to wrap it up and call it a day. Wanted to show how clean, look at that. Maybe I'll do a little bead blasting. This stuff cleans up real easy, you know, when I put it in the cabinet. It'll clean if I hold it about this far away, you know, maybe 1.5 inches, 2 inches, about 2 inches away. It'll bead blast about a 1/2 inch wide, and I can go about like this up the thing, and it just cleans up like new because it's just such a light surface rust. You know, when it's pitted, when they're really badly pitted, it takes a lot more because you got to get all the crud out of the pits. But maybe I'll try and do a little video on, I have in the past. I'll hold the camera up and just do a, 10-15 seconds of blasting, so you can see how easy this stuff cleans up. That puts in perspective. The camera, yeah, it looks like it's been sitting on the bottom of a lake, but it really doesn't, and cleans up really easy. So we're gonna work on that, and then until I get the other set of jack stands and stuff and get these moved so I can get the shocks out and the spring compressors up in there. So if you like my video, hit the like button. If you want to see this car resurrected and back on the road, subscribe to my channel. And as always, thank you for watching. Gotta hold the camera with one hand while I blast with the other. That's where they're usually the worst, right by the wheel cylinder. Cleans right up. The original water pump pulley even turned out pretty good, cleaned up pretty nice. It still has that spot where it was rusted out, but that's the back side of the pulley. This is the front side. And overall it looks pretty good, other than right there. And like I say, that's the back side, and when that's visible, it'll be behind the belt, so maybe the belt will hide it. I don't know. For now I'm going to reuse this pulley. It has a C5AE and then an 85090.